Thank you for inviting me here, and it's a great pleasure and honor to open this seminar with the first presentation. As Ineta mentioned, we have been colleagues for 20 years and working together with the so-called Baltic Sea Regional Studies program. But we haven't met so often during the last years. But in the spring we met in Tallinn in a seminar for applied linguistics, and this is one result of that meeting. I come from Turku. It's the old capital of Finland and the second largest university in Finland. We have about 20,000 students and 3,300 staff members, both academic and support staff. And I've been a vice rector for 6 years. This is the 7th academic year, but before that I was a professor of Russian studies, both language and culture. And so I'm a linguist, I don't come from educational sciences, but I have been involved a lot in subject teacher training also. And in this presentation I would like to give you an overview of the Finnish teacher education in general, and especially the curriculum processes, both at university level and the school curriculum development. And then, of course, about some trends in teacher education. Now we have also a development project going on in Finland for teacher education, and I'll tell you something about that. I have some copies about the university, so if you can give them. So we have been doing well in education in general and in school. Teacher education, especially in international comparisons, and I think that the main secret, the key, is that Finland is a society of trust, of mutual trust. We have very little corruption, we trust each other, we are very transparent, all data is open. For instance, all data concerning education at all levels is open on internet in 3 languages, Finnish, Swedish and English, and it has been so from 1980s. Everybody can check what are the numbers, graduate numbers or mobility numbers or so and so. So there is very strong culture of trust, and that is maybe the main reason. There are threatening signs now. Finland is becoming more heterogeneous, and so on, but anyway, we still are a culture of trust. And on the other hand, the other secret is that teacher's profession is appreciated. It's a prestigious profession. It has been so for 200 years, or at least 150 years. But I'll give a very brief history of here also, so you see where did we come to this. And we have a so-called now I'm seeking for a word. So we have equal opportunities. It's a country of equal opportunities. So basic compulsory education is free for everybody, and it includes also books and meals and transportation and healthcare. And I think always when I'm asked what is the secret behind Finnish PISA success, and I have to answer that it's the highly qualified teachers. The teacher training, we educate good teachers and then we trust them. But I think that one very important reason behind this success is that we have free lunch. And we have had it from 1940s. 1948. Finland introduced free warm lunch for school children. So they can study also in the afternoon. and that is one very important reason. So not only teachers are important, but also the environment, the learning environments are very important. Very briefly about the system, maybe it's quite similar to other countries. So we start at 6 with pre-primary education, 1 year's pre-primary education, which is now compulsory also from last year, but also before this, I think 98% of children were involved in pre-primary education. 9 years primary education, which is compulsory. And then you can choose either vocational secondary education or a general secondary education. And they are nowadays, well, general secondary education is a bit more popular, but they are quite 50-50. And what is a bit threatening is that boys are choosing vocational secondary education and girls are choosing general secondary education, which leads directly to universities. But there are no dead ends. Even if you choose the vocational secondary education, you can continue in higher education, either in the so-called University of Applied Sciences, the professional universities, or in research universities. And if you take a degree, if you graduate from the University of Applied Sciences, so the professional one, you have also an opportunity to continue in doctoral studies in research universities. You have to take some additional so-called bridging studies, but anyway, you have that opportunity if you have competencies. So no dead ends. And in higher education, as I mentioned, two sectors. We call it the dual system or binary system, and the professional University of Applied Sciences are much younger. They started in 1990s, and of course the research universities are old. The first one was established in Turku in 1640, 8 years later than Tartu in 1632, and it was the third university in Sweden, because then Finland was a part of Swedish kingdom. So Uppsala, Tartu and Turku were the first three Swedish universities. University of Applied Sciences offer bachelor degrees and professional master's degrees, and then research universities, of course, all three cycles, also doctoral education. There has been a discussion about professional doctorates, but I don't think they are coming. And the ministry has said that there will be no professional doctorates, and it will be only in research universities. So this is the very brief history. Just I can't see there. So it started already in mid 19th century. In 1863, the first college, or it was called Seminarium Pedagogicum, at that time was founded in Jyväskylä. Jyväskylä is the home of Finnish primary education, and it's still a very strong university in teacher education. There are 8 departments of teacher education in 8 universities, but Jyväskylä is the very traditional one. And it has a connection with the establishment of elementary schools in 1850s. And from 1898, every child had a right to get elementary education, and from 1921 it was compulsory. So almost 100 years again already. We took models from Switzerland and Germany. So there is behind this education is a strong German tradition. And the idea from the very beginning was a close connection between theory and practice. And there were later founded also several others, together 12, this kind of Seminarium Pedagogicum. They were, for those who had already upper secondary education, it was only 1 year, but for those who had only elementary education, it took 3 years to become a school teacher. A great change happened in the 1970s, as in many things. In Finland in general, 1960s, 1970s have been the period of biggest growth in university studies. And in 1971, Finland moved to 9-year basic compulsory school, and the teacher education moved to universities, to research universities. In fact, it happened in 1974 started the university teacher training departments, and from that time it has been compulsory to have master level education, both in primary school and in secondary school. And it was a very big change, of course. And in mid-1990s, also kindergarten teacher training became a part of universities. But kindergarten teachers have a bachelor level education. But primary school, secondary school teachers all have a master level education. So teacher qualifications are prescribed by the law, but they are different for different kind of teachers, and it's an extremely popular field of studies. We have, especially for class teacher education, primary school teacher education, we have 10 applicants per place, and we have used numerus clausus, so it's a very competitive profession. And that's of course one important reason. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, there is a trend that girls go to general secondary education, boys go to vocational education, and that means that it's mostly a female profession. Girls do better both in primary and secondary schools, and they apply for universities, and they become also teachers. And that we'd like to have more male teachers too. It would be good for the schools, but it is mostly female profession. Subject teachers are a bit different, of course, especially in natural sciences, mathematics. They are male teachers. So two kinds of teachers: class teachers who graduate from faculties of education. And they have educational sciences as their major, and then subject teachers who graduate from so-called subject faculties, humanities, mathematics, natural sciences, and they have as their major some subject which is taught in secondary education, and then they take 1 year studies in the Faculty of Pedagogics, 60 ECTS credit points. We offer also education in university pedagogics, from separate courses, both traditional and online. We have also an online program for university pedagogics until the whole 60 ECTS credit points. So if you take this 60 points in university pedagogics, you are also qualified for teaching in secondary education. So it gives the so-called general qualification too. And what is also very important is that these 60 ECTS points includes at least 20 points of training, practical training in the training schools. We don't have any state-level standards or state-level curricula for higher education in any field. Of course, for instance, medicine has the European standards, and also some natural sciences use some European or international standards, but institutions decide, and in fact faculties decide on curricula. But I'll explain the curriculum process in more detail later. And in teacher education, it's very important to educate independent teachers who have also skills in research. They are researchers of their own work and develop also their own work. And so it has been from 1970s. Of course, before the teacher education moved to universities, it was a bit different. But anyway, even then, we emphasized research-based education, but of course, especially now. So how happens a curriculum? What is the curriculum process like in Finnish universities? This is my example, so to say. So every faculty is responsible for the curriculum, and they are also responsible for the quality of degrees. So university is responsible for the quality of education in general, teaching and learning in general, but then faculty is responsible for degrees, for the quality of degrees. Maybe I should say something about the quality assurance system, because it's also important. We don't have any accreditation system in Finland, but we use so-called institutional audits. That means that it's an enhancement-led quality assurance system. It's an improvement-led quality assurance system. So the quality assurance agency, with its audits, produces information that universities and faculties can use when they themselves improve their actions. So it's development oriented and enhancement oriented. So faculties are responsible for the level and the quality of degrees. And that's why they also construct their own curricula. And Curricula have been competence-based or learning outcome-based from 2005, when we moved to the so-called Bologna system, the European higher education area system, which meant moving to bachelor-master system. Before that we had a one-cycle master, and before that we had a bachelor-master system. So there have been changes always, but from 2005. Then they were more or less formally competence-based. But the development has continued, and today I think they are really competence-based or learning outcome-based, the curricula. The process is they are updated every 2 years. We used to have a system of updating curricula every year. It was very formal, just adding some books or taking away some textbooks or so, but we moved to a 2-year cycle. Some universities have even 3-year cycle for updating curricula, but we have used a 2-year cycle. And now we are starting new curricula, or have started, so next spring, in May or so, I'll send a letter, so-called vice-rector's letter, to the faculties and departments with guidelines, with general guidelines, and then in every round we have some special development targets. For instance, special attention to assessment, or special attention to digitalization of learning and teaching, and so on. And then the units, the departments and subjects and departments and faculties start to process, and they use teams or groups. It used to be very individual. So every teacher added his or her own textbooks and changed his or her own courses and so. But now we emphasize that it has to be done in groups. It has a group work. It's not one man or one show. And first they start with evaluation of the previous curricula and analysis of student feedback system. And student feedback system is very important for us. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you can get these slides later, of course. It's one of the basic guarantees of our quality in education. So we have a course feedback system, which means all courses, all the faculties can choose. Maybe it's not clever to give some kind of evaluation for every time at the end of the course or during the course, but faculties have freedom to organize it. But anyway, there is a course feedback. Then we have a first year experience feedback at the end of first study year. It is also our institutional one, but there are similar ones in other universities too. And it's very important because it's the first experience of the new students. And we analyze it very thoroughly. It's very important for us. Then we have a national system for so-called bachelor feedback at the end of bachelor studies. It's a national one. And it's analyzed also at national level, but then we get our own results and can use it until the subject or department level, if the department is big enough. Because it's anonymous and you can't use it for very small groups, because then you can recognize the respondents. It is also used in our state funding. So 3% of state funding comes to the universities on the basis of student feedback, bachelor feedback. And it might grow. There's a reform of funding model going on, but it might grow. So we have a totally performance-based funding. We don't get money for student numbers or anything like that. We get money for graduates, bachelor's, masters, for degrees, doctorates, publications, mobility numbers, and so on. Amount of external funding, for instance. So it's a very tough system, very demanding system, but it's very transparent. It's very easy to count. Why did that university get that sum of money? And one indicator in the funding model is student feedback. And then we have also 2 feedback systems for graduates. 1 year after graduation, it's so-called employment feedback, and then 5 years after graduation, so-called career feedback. And they are very useful too. when we asked the graduates a bit later, what was useful in your studies, what should we have had more, and so on. So feedback system is an important part of all quality assurance. So, yeah, but on purpose, yeah. So, first analysis of the previous curriculum and analysis of the student feedback, and then the groups work. There are teachers, researchers. There might be also external stakeholders from advisory boards, and what is very important, students. So, in every working group or committee or university board, there are students. And it has been so from 1970s. I have been a student member at Faculty Council when I was a student, and we were the first ones. So it's a very strong tradition, and we have so-called third principle, 1/3 professors, 1/3 of other staff members, and 1/3 of students, and they are full members of all kinds of working groups. And they are very good today. When I was young, we were more or less on the opposite sides of the barricade. It was 70s, and it maybe continued in 80s, but today we have we have joint goals. We have the same goals. Maybe sometimes, of course, student unions are trade unions and they fight for their rights, but anyway, we work very well together, and students are very well prepared. The students' unions are very strong in Finland, and I would say that the National Student Union is much more powerful than the Professors' Union. And it's also because the tradition is also already so strong. We have ministers and so on who have been student representatives in student, and they remember that they have been student representatives. Very many ministers today come from student politics. Director of the Finnish Bank is a former leader of student unions and so on. So that makes it very important, and it's a very good system. So they are not only responsible for the free time hobbies and so on, but they are responsible also for the development of education as a part of that. So then the groups work about half a year, a bit more, and then I visit the faculties 2-3 months before the deadline. So they have already a lot ready, but they have still time to compete, and they have to tell what they have done, what kind of plans they have, what works, what doesn't work, and they are very good discussions, this kind of discussions, and it's also very useful. And then the curricula are accepted by the faculty board and published on university websites. So this is the curriculum process for the universities. The main components in primary school teacher education are here. So as I mentioned, every teacher has to have a master level education, but it's in 2 parts: a bachelor 180 ECTS credits and a master 120 ECT credits. There are at the beginning orientation and general studies, then basic, intermediate, and advanced in master's degree, studies in educational sciences, but at least 120 ECTS points of this 300 goes to educational sciences. There are multidisciplinary studies for primary school teachers, of course, in subjects that are taught in schools. They are small courses, and that might be a problem. For instance, now when we are discussing that our results in mother tongue are getting worse, one reason might be here that these primary school teachers have only a couple of credit points in Finnish language in mother tongue, and well, we don't know. There are other reasons too. Then the students in primary school education can choose an optional subject. They can choose minor studies. They can take larger courses in subjects also. And of course, in every degree there is a package of language and communication studies, Finnish, Swedish, and then one foreign language at least. So every student has to take an exam also in Swedish, because Finland is a bilingual country, although the minority, Swedish-speaking minority, is quite small. But traditionally we have been a bilingual country, and although the minority of Swedish-speaking population is about 6% now, we still require both languages from everybody. BA thesis and master's thesis, of course, and what is special in Turku Faculty of Education, they start research workshops from the first year. It's easier to then write the thesis when you have started with smaller tasks already from the first year. And they start attending the training school already from the first year. They don't teach, but they follow teaching in a training school. So training schools are very important for Finnish system. Every university that has teacher education has a training school. Helsinki even too, because it's so big. And training schools have been, I would say, elite schools. I remember when I was, as a young master, I was teaching in a training school for 2 years before moving to university. There were mostly children from very wealthy families or very well-educated families, professors, children, and so on. And then it was in the city center. But then it moved to a suburb, and it's a region where the percentage of immigrant people is the highest in the country. And that means that today Turku Training School has children with, I think, more than 50 mother tongues. They teach at least 12, if I remember correctly, mother tongues for the biggest groups as home language, as we call it, and more than half of the pupils have other than Finnish as a mother tongue. So it's a very multicultural school, and it's different from other training schools. In Helsinki, it's still an elite school in city center. And that's very important for the future teachers, that now they are training in a school that is very, very multicultural. Maybe they will then work in small villages without any immigrants, but they have got a training in this kind of school. So every student takes part in teacher training. We have about 3,000 teacher students annually, and they start from the first year, they follow the lessons and so on, and then they start to teach. And they have an own tutor among the teachers in the training schools and so on. So this is, in practice, the close relationship between theory and practice. And it's very, very functional. Training schools have also been renovated during the last years. We have very nice training schools today, and they also support the new ways of teaching. The learning environments are very different. I'll come back to this a bit later. And the training schools have also a very tight network, national network, and they develop the training schools together. So this is I think, this is very important, because they are part of the university on the one hand, and on the other hand they are part of the municipal school network. Schools have so-called core curricula. So we have national core curricula for pre-primary, primary, secondary education, vocational education, but not for higher education. So higher education institutions are fully autonomous, and they don't have any national core curricula. But schools have core curricula, and they are reformed usually every 10 years, mostly every 10 years. The previous ones from 2006, and now we've got new ones 2016. It's not said anywhere that it has to be 10 years, but it has been usually about 10 years. And the process of curriculum development involves both school personnel and educational providers, municipalities, and stakeholders. So these core curricula include general objectives, core contents, and so on, but then at school level the teachers prepare the real curricula, so to say. they are, again, they draw up their own curricula. So the responsibility at school level is a fact at all levels, from pre-primary education until higher education. The main responsibility lies on teachers and schools. Schools are municipal. Both primary and secondary schools are municipal, except of those training schools which are part of universities, but it's local level. What was new in the latest curriculum? So there is less attention to subject, to content, subject, and more attention to generic or transversal skills. And they are based on the learning conception that children should have positive emotional experiences. One reason behind this is that although Finnish school children succeed very well, they do not always feel well at schools. When we make surveys for school children, they don't like the school. and maybe that's one reason for emphasizing the experience, the positive educational experiences. There is much more collaboration, both between teachers and between school children at school level, because the other side of educating very qualified, independent researchers of their own work as teachers and so on is that they have been maybe too autonomous, too alone. And now the new system emphasizes collaboration between teachers too. They can work together practically, they can combine classes and work together, but of course the main way of collaboration is the development work. And what is also new, we used to have so-called problem-based learning, but now it's called phenomenon-based projects. It's more or less the same, but not only a new name, but maybe a bit new system too. So every class has to have annually at least one so-called phenomenon-based project, which is then discussed in all subjects. Last year, when Finland celebrated its 100 years of independence, I think that every school had some kind of phenomenon-based project on Finland 100. but they are, well, climate change is a very, very popular theme for these phenomenon-based projects, water, and so on. Migration, yeah, food today is very, very, very popular too. So at least one project annually, but many classes have more than one. And this is new too. There has been a discussion that was it a good solution to reduce the subject content? But we'll see. It has been only 2 years with work with this new curricula. On the other hand, everything is changing so rapidly that maybe the content, the exact content of subject is not that important, but the most important is that you have learned to learn. And then you manage all these future changes. So it was an answer to the changes in society, the changes in the world, in the grand challenges, of course, and one challenge has been this, as I mentioned already, that Finland has become more heterogeneous. It used to be a very homogeneous country. We are an island at the end of the northern Europe, and it changed. So teachers have to have a capability to teach in very diverse classrooms, and I think that there is also a need for more systematic approach to the development of teachers' competence. So, of those teachers who are already working, we haven't been very, very good in that. So, if you have a teacher education from 1980s, you need some continuous education and continuous training, and that was also one one reason. And the state supported it with the development program. I have one paper copy here of this program, but you can find it if you Google just Teacher Education Development Project. So the ministry allocated 60 million euros for this development program for 3 years from 2016 until this year. It's not ready yet, but it has been going on for 2 years, and the topics, the main issues there are those that I have already mentioned. So how to utilize the latest research and how to answer to the changes in teachers' role and teachers' profession, how to meet the challenges of digitalization of education and so on and so forth, and how to find more collaborative ways for working. And there is also an evaluation going on this project, on this development program by the Finnish National Quality Assurance Agency, FINAC. And it's not ready yet, but I got some results already. And the best results are in phenomenon development of phenomenon-based project learning. There's a clear progress in the development of that. The teacher training departments have used this very well. At least 3/4 of students in teacher training know that there is this kind of development program going on. But for instance, and the digitalization, Finland is now very eager to develop all kind of online teaching and use of digitalization in learning and teaching. Not everybody is happy for that, as you can imagine. But where we have a lot to do is still in the development of acting teachers, and that's maybe the main challenge, and also in academic and pedagogical leadership development. But there will be results at the end of this year, and then of course also recommendations how to continue. So that was the basic. That was that.